Now, after that awkward post-launch lunch silence, we can get into this. Okay, thanks for coming. I can't believe it. Apparently there's like a rock star somewhere over there, but you chose to come here. All right. Now, the secret is you're going to have the most fun, no doubt. So today, Chips and Pickle story. What's really behind infamous UI failures. I realized 5 minutes ago I had to change the title because I am now in the UK and I haven't given it here. So is that correct? Crisps and pickle? Did I get that right? Because we're talking about potato chips, not French fries. All right. I'm an American. Give me some slack here. Okay. Experienced Dean, that's me. Twitter, Instagram. I am a owner of a UX company in South Carolina, United States. We do UX for complex digital products, which means all day, every day, we're spending time with developers doing some pretty cool stuff. Okay, but on to the subject matter here. This is a pickle. Now, how many of you like pickles? Oh, damn it. Okay, how many of you don't? Does anyone? Oh, okay. All right, this is for you. Okay, did I see a hand? Excellent. Front row doesn't like pickles. All right. I hate them. Okay, I mean, I really hate them. I loathe them to the North Star. Now, I do so, right or wrong, excuse me, because there's two big problems, at least where I'm from, with pickles. One, they put a pickle on your plate and the briny juices, I will say, infect the rest of the plate. You might say it's a wonderful experience. Now, again, where I'm from, you order lunch and pickles are the thing that show up on your plate whether you ask for it or not. They show up. So you can imagine someone like me is trying to disrupt an existing process and I say, hey, please, with my turkey sandwich, I would like no pickle. And what happens to me? Anyone venture a guess? Do I get a pickle? Of course I get a pickle. And I get a pickle every time because I'm disrupting a process. So I decided to do some new techniques to not get one. Now, I didn't lie, and say I'm allergic to pickles and they'll kill me. It's a lie. I'm not going to do that. I just hate them. So I finally decided to put some hand motions to it. So I'd say, I'd like this turkey sandwich and no pickle, like this. And surprisingly, this gives me good results. Y'all might want to try that at some point. And my no pickle results did fine. Now, I don't know if it's because of the motion that's memorable or the server goes back and is like, hey, you got to don't put a pickle on this guy's plate because he's, he might do something. Whatever. Point is, I hate them. Now, if that makes sense, let's start with the villain of the story. Now, this is a company, excuse me, company in United States. I don't know if they're here in the UK. They make wonderful sandwiches. Jason's Deli, what's not to like? And every single meal that Jason's Deli prepares comes with a pickle. See? Right there. Evidence that it shows up every single time. Now, with Jason's Deli, the problem I had is no matter what I did, tap dance, whatever, I still get a pickle, no matter what I did. And I got to wondering why. And I went ahead and I looked at their menu. I'm trying to see, are they lying to me? Are there pickles associated with the menu? So I go ahead and I look at their menu and this is only half of their online menu, by the way. A little Control F discovers only one mention of pickles on the entire page, and that's in a branded kids meal. So they don't say anything about pickles. Doggone it, I get one. So this really frustrates me, and I decide one day to go to Jason's Deli because I had a bad day and I just needed a good lunch experience. You know what I'm talking about? I had just a bad client situation. Nothing's going right. Everything we tested goes wrong. I'm dealing with it. I need to escape for 30 minutes. I order turkey sandwich, chicken sandwich, whatever. No pickle. And of course, I get a pickle. And this is really, I'm already in a bad mood. You know what I mean. Get a pickle and you don't want one? It's a bad deal. And this young gentleman I don't know, 18, 19 years old. He comes by the table as we're eating. And how is everything today? And I said, quite frankly, your process is broken, and I want to know why. And he smiles, thinking it's a joke, and he's about to walk off. He's like, sir, I'm serious. I need to understand what happens with your process that goes from me saying no pickle to this pickle on the plate every time. I've got to know why. And so he says to me, I'm going to go find out. And later, he comes back and says, I have your answer. And I was like, this is fantastic. And the answer, to begin, comes down to one interface button. I told you, we're getting into the UI stuff pretty soon. Okay. Now, it comes down to one interface button on the cash register. And it's the chips and pickle button. Crisps and pickle. Every lunch also comes with chips. Nobody says no to chips, not even me. But you always get a pickle with the chips. You can't have a chips button and a pickles button. No. You have to have them both. So what happens? Well, I'll tell you why it's a little worse than even this. It's a UI problem. I get a pickle every time at Jason's Deli. That's sort of the deal. Now, I decided to investigate a little further. What if this is just a quirk at Jason's Deli? I know. I'm a smart guy. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Do you need like a, no? Is that good? Okay. All right. So I'm going to go and use the mobile app, because I'm a smart guy. I'm going to do that. And I notice I'm going to go in my sandwich and they have all these sides. It's great. Only it's completely different from what you can do in the restaurant. And I like, oh, look, it says crisps, oven-baked potato crisps. That's what I want. That's the thing that motivates me. But of course, it comes with a pickle. But some of the others don't for some reason that I can't explain. Of course, the one I did has it. And so I'm a little upset at that, but I'm going to keep trying. And then I get to this wonderful, wonderful box, special requests. It's just for me. And I'm going to tell him, for the love of God, man, no pickles. This is what I want to say. And so I start typing, and of course, I added please, but I immediately cannot type anymore. Now, I'm not told I can't type anymore, except it's only 25 characters. Doesn't let you know, just stops you typing. A nice little interface quirk that gets me very angry. Now, of course, I had to determine it was 25 characters by trial and error, and I ended up with a perfect rendition of 25 characters, punctuation and all, to the letter, and this is what I get. And then I notice I can also personalize my meal, as if I'd be that narcissistic. No, I'm going to use it for another message, which is precisely 25 characters with punctuation. I simply guessed that that's what they would offer, and of course they did. Now, I go ahead and do the order, and what happens to me? Yeah, I got the pickle. So I don't think anyone reads that stuff. Take that for later. Now, so what this means, all right, is bad UI choices, both on a register and an app, have basically killed my lunch. On and on and on and over again. Y'all who don't like pickles might know what I mean. Now, I get it though, okay? But there's more. There's bad process around it. And this is what I want us to remember today. Always bad process follows bad UI in sort of circular fashion. Bad process makes things worse. Now, of course, I get it. There are plenty of problems in the world, and really this isn't one of them. All right. So I thought, well, what if UI quirks cause real problems, real serious stuff? And I started doing some research. And I found the best stuff. Or is it the worst? We'll call it the worst. All right. And we're going to go over a few of those today and why the UI problems involved are eerily similar to my own first world problem. First one, and you might have heard of some of these, but I'm going to take a little bit of a different twist on these. 38 minutes to live. Now, back in 2018 in Hawaii, let's say you were commuting to work one day early in the morning, and this pops up on your phone. It pops up on everyone's phone. It pops up on billboards, digital billboards everywhere. There are news reports, and this is exactly the thing that was done you're about to be incinerated. Global nuclear war has begun. Okay. Not the thing you want to see on your commute. And then you get to thinking, is this real? And you think, well, North Korea is pretty close. Do they have something that could reach us? Maybe. And you start to freak out a little bit. And everyone's calling grandma over in Hawaii. Are you okay, grandma? I never really told you about how much I love you and all this stuff. And that lasted 38 minutes. Now, 38 minutes is not a long time. That's shorter than this talk. But if you think you're about to be burned alive by a missile, or grandma is, it's eternity. It's forever. It's agony. 38 minutes later, this is what happened on everyone's phone and on all these billboards all across Hawaii. Kidding. No, it's fine. There's not really a missile. We basically goofed. Please go about your business. There were car accidents. There were all sorts of crazy things happening because of this, by the way, and lots of lawsuits, as you can imagine. And the next day, this is what the newspaper looked like, sort of award-winning newspaper, and this is what started getting me, because I'm a UI guy. Someone pressed the wrong button. I'm like, I just don't think so. And this is what the governor said. So I'm going to investigate on your behalf. And I said, I think there's software involved in this. And I'm going to find out. Well, I didn't have to wait long because the very next day, the governor puts out what the offending button was. And this is it. And these are a series of messages that you could have chosen should you have wanted to post a missile drill or an actual missile disaster. See the difference here. The first one says drill in front, and that's how I know that, it's a drill. But they look the same, and I'm thinking, sure, maybe I could have slipped up and hit the wrong thing, messed up everyone's day. But then the plot thickens, and the next day they say, no, actually, just kidding, it was this one. So I already know I can't trust anyone who's saying anything about what happened. But you can see that even in this one, it's basically the same problem, okay? And you can say, yeah, all right, I get it. You can make an error like that. Sure, whatever. But that is software, okay? And I know it. And that looks like a drop down to me, not a button. So I researched companies that provided this stuff across the United States. And lo and behold, there's one company that provides a lot of this alert software for most states. This is their demo. Had to extract it from some arcane PDFs, but got it for you. And now I'm seeing, you could pick a template and all this sort of stuff, right? And send out an alert. Fine. Looks a little better, doesn't it? Right? You just have, on one side, looks a little more plain language. On the other side, it's kind of a mess, right? And you're thinking just a normal person has to make a choice. Okay. So far, so good. I see it's a mess. But this is software. Do we not have safeguards? We do, right? You can't just press a button and cause mass panic. All right, you have, are you sure you want to do this? I know this. And indeed, the software did have this. You couldn't just send a real missile alert. So they did this big report, okay? Always a big report. I read it for you. And they blamed poor computer software design, like the DOI, right? Okay, but the question is human factors, because they said someone goofed. In fact, the dude who sent the alert, that guy was fired right away. Okay. Now, here's the thing though. He's like, fire me. I did it right. You told me there was a missile attack and I pressed the button. And so he sues for wrongful termination over this. So are there human factors? Was there a mistake? This is the issue. Now, what really happened here was a process snafu. And there was a shift change. There's always a shift change. Spoiler alert, okay? And new guy comes in and doesn't hear the directive that there's going to be an exercise. They blare the announcement over his phone. There's an alert sound. Instead of listening, straight up, he picks up the receiver. And this is what he says, upon picking up the receiver, on the way to his ear, he misses the words, exercise, exercise, exercise. And then he's like, OMG, you have got to, put out this alert, we're all going to die, right? Now, the process was bad because at the end of the process, they were supposed to say, this is a drill, but they failed to do that. So he didn't hear that this is the drill stuff. And he's like, and he sends out the alert, and everyone in Hawaii freaks out for 38 minutes. And what actually happened, there's a long story to this, can't get into all of it, but the software was bad enough that you had really hard, you couldn't review or take back messages well. So some really smart person had to say, I know, we'll just hack a new message and replace it. And it took them 38 minutes to come to this realization, and they send it and everything's fine. Okay, so far so good. UI and process. All right, the UI problems are clear. It's what I call appalling content strategy of poor naming, poor organization. You have multiple confusing choices. I can see no matter what, that's bad. That's really bad software design. You have live and test alerts allowed in the exact same dropdown of a software interface. You can't review sent messages. You give users way too much control over what they can do. This is all bad design that people in this room will instantly recognize as bad design. But there's also process breakdown, right? There's poor communication that there was going to be a drill. Okay, fine. There were faulty procedures, literally incorrectly done procedures, and the procedures weren't good in the first place. People weren't trained to use this software correctly or to name things well or name them correctly. None of that happened because all the people who were trained, they're all gone, and new people have come in and no one's trained. And so this is what happens. And of course, the response is bumbling, and this is what we get. And it's all about just little problems with software that are exacerbated by process. Everyone blames everyone else. And the lawsuits went on and are still outstanding. Now, this changed the way in America we had to approach alert software. This company had to redesign a bunch of their stuff, and it had to deploy to everyone, and new controls about how you do alerts like this. So, the next time there's a thermonuclear attack, we'll do it much better. Okay, let's stick with the same idea here and focus on meltdown. This is a little bit further back, and some of you may remember in the United States, 1979 is the year. And some of you might remember 3 Mile Island. This is a nuclear plant in the Susquehanna River in Pennsylvania. This is in the northeast of the United States. And at one point, reactor 2 starts having a problem, and it's a problem of overheating. It's threatening meltdown. And it was a big freaking deal in America. We were like, do we have to evacuate the entire northeastern seaboard of the United States, or like what? This is what everyone's thinking at the time. And of course, this happened like a week after the movie The China Syndrome came out, which was about a nuclear meltdown. Bad timing for a mistake. Okay. And they went ahead and did an investigation. Now, this is the control room. It's really important. This is then President Carter. The man is still alive. And I love his little booties he's wearing. But spoiler alert here, look at the control room. There's a zillion knobs, switches, bells, whistles, everything. It's a pretty complex deal. It's either engineering heaven or hell. Take your pick. Now, all this happened because of one little problem. There was a huge presidential commission report. I've read it and found the important passages that we can talk about today. Okay, there was this little valve. Just know it's called the PORV valve. Excuse me. All right, and it's supposed to stay shut. All right, so the coolant is in the reactor. Everything stays cool and everything's fine. All right. Now, there is this indicator light in that room that's supposed to go on when it's closed. Okay, so we know, hey, PORV valve's closed, coolant's in the reactor, no problem, right? So what happened was this little PORV valve, it gets stuck open, coolant leaks out, everything's heating up. But lo and behold, the interface in the engineering room has a little light, the PORV valve light is on. It's on. It's on because its job was to say, hey, that signal I was supposed to send to that valve to tell it to close, I sent it. That's what it means. I sent an instruction successfully. Not that the instruction was in fact completed. So this valve's open, everything's heating up. No one thinks, look at the PORV valve. Everyone's like, what else is wrong? They go, it's not A, let's go to B, let's go to C, let's go to D. Nothing's working, nothing's working, nothing's working. It's getting hotter, it's getting hotter. And the things they started doing started making problems worse. So for 2 days, are we going to melt down? All right. Now, another problem, engineering room, control room. Okay. At any given time in that room, there would be 52 plus alarms lit. Now that's when things are, going as they should. All right. But here's the deal. All of these instruments, some of them are faulty. Some of them go wrong. And when they go wrong, this is 1979. It's not like we're going, into Jira and logging it or something like that, right? We're just writing on this little tag that says, hey, this button's broken. And you literally wrote it, you tied it on there, chaboom. And this particular control room is just full of this stuff. And in many cases, these tags cover other things that are kind of important to see, like indicator lights and such. So the problem gets worse and worse. Now, okay, so our basic problems are these. For our purposes, unpacked quickly. Function foremost, right? We are thinking solely about function in the control room. In fact, when we think about the indicator light, it worked exactly correctly. It did its function perfectly well. It just was an incorrect function to track. Right? It would never happen before. A valve like that never got stuck open. Like that can't happen. But it did. So it works as specified. Human behavior interfered. Okay, once again, this happened and a shift change occurred. Shift change always occur. Always a problem. Never have shift changes. And only after the shift change did everyone try to go back to the beginning and try to resolve the problem. This is where the smart people, like us, come into play. And someone says, what if there really is a problem with the valve? And half the room's like, God, no. And someone says, maybe we ought to check. They check, the valve's broken, they get the valve closed, and the problem goes away. Now, it just took someone, excuse me, it took someone really being creative. Just like the previous example. It didn't work within the context of procedures. Usability in this situation, more of an afterthought, okay? And there's, of course, process failure. All the communication was bad. Again, I can't get into this totally, but let's suffice it to say that the way people communicated how they were solving the problem to each other was really poor and wasted time. And they had these intense bureaucratic structures. A nuclear power plant, you've got to do things a certain way. And only when someone broke a bad process did they find the actual problem. And, it could have been horribly bad. Thankfully, it was not. Of course, you can noticing a theme? No one's ever wrong. All right? Okay. The real issue here, and remember, this is a little valve, an indicator light for a valve. After 1979, the United States' use of nuclear energy and sanctioning of new plants and stuff, it just goes down. I mean, if 3 Mile Island hadn't occurred, the United States' energy profile would look totally different today. One little valve. Okay, one more. Butterfly. We're going to go to the 2000 election in the United States, which some of you may remember. But suffice it to say, the American electoral system's a little weird. When we elect presidents, we don't do it by raw popular vote. We do it by 50 state elections. And each state gets a certain number of votes based on population. And for math, that eludes me. You have to get to 270 is the magic number. It still is today. And at the end of election night in the year 2000 with George W. Bush, versus Al Gore, no one gets to 270. Okay, it's really close. There's one state outstanding. That's Florida, as you see in the tan. Whoever wins that takes the whole thing. And there are, I can't remember the exact number, but it was a minuscule number of votes. It was so close, it simply couldn't be called. And so a bunch of recounts ensue. And it was a real problem for us, sort of an existential crisis for, I don't know, 6+ weeks. We just have no idea who's going to be the president, who's going to be the administration. I love this Newsweek cover. It's great. But let's go back to the interface that caused the problem. This is the butterfly ballot. No longer used, and you'll see why in a minute. You would go and vote, and even in 2000, this was old. Okay, this is not like everyone was using this stuff, right? It's a paper ballot system. Right, you have this sort of book-looking thing, and it kind of looks like a butterfly, right? I mean, it's got like a spine and these lovely wings and all this stuff. And you have this card that goes under it, and you take this little pin and you poke a hole through the one that you want, and then the card comes out, and they read it electronically, and kaboom, no problem, right? Well, when you have a lot of candidates, and that's true in a presidential election in America, of course, only 2 parties in America even come close to mattering, and everyone else is running, so it kind of makes this a big mess. Let's look at the 2 major candidates. You got the Republican candidate, the Democratic candidate. Those are basically your major ones. Over there on the right, you got a Reform Party, very, very, very small and inconsequential. Now, Republican Party leans right, Democratic Party leans left, Reform Party leans way right. Okay. Say you wanted to vote for George W. Bush. No problem, right? Number 3. Boom, you did it. Congratulations. Say you wanted to vote, you're one of the few people who wanted to vote for the Reform Party. Number 4, got it. All right, fine. Say you wanted to vote for Al Gore. Well, do you do the one next to the 5, or do you do the first one you see? Hard to say. And people, they theorized correctly, were making this mistake because they looked at everything closely in Florida. We were hundreds of votes close. It was very close. And they looked at South Florida, where there was a massive just Democratic stronghold. I mean, they were just like, 70-30, 80-20. This is big numbers. And way too many votes for Pat Buchanan are showing up. Because if you wanted to vote for Al Gore, but did that first one, congratulations, you just voted for Pat Buchanan. And he's probably, the least likely person you wanted to vote for. You didn't want to vote for George W. Bush. You really didn't want to vote for this guy. But these mistakes happen. This is a theory, and pretty well attested at this point. Okay, this led to all these problems. Okay, people are trying to count all these votes, and then they get these cards, and they're like, well, what happened when someone started to poke a hole and like, it's not what I wanted. And then in another one, so one's dented and one's poked through, 2 are poked through. They had this weird thing where you poke through, but it's still kind of not totally off, and it's called a hanging chad. And do we count them? Do we not? Total mess. Nick from Boston, you know what I'm talking about if you remember the 2000 election. It was a complete cluster. Okay, now, what can we learn? It's bad UI, right? That's why we're here. It's completely inept UI. It's the worst thing I've ever seen in elections, okay? It's completely awkward, easy to make a mistake. You never want to make a system where making a mistake is the default, right? That's basically what's happening there. And the design fits the machine. This is a real issue in UX and UI. We are designing an interface to fit a function, to fit an existing structure instead of doing the right thing. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that, of course. It's always, money, time, development, everything, right? But that's what's happening. But beyond it, okay, there's something I like to call strategic malpractice, which means this system worked only if things went perfectly. Sounds like a great plan for software development, right? They never encountered a problem like this before. Usually in elections, things aren't that close, okay? And if there's a problem with votes you're not quite sure about, or no one made a choice, or they made 2 choices, you kind of put that aside. And if there's a problem, you go back and mess with them. There's hardly ever a problem. There's never that close. In this case, when it was that close, uh-oh, and then we, reverse engineer it all the way back to this ballot and go, what the hell have we done, right? And these are huge implications in the United States. It's fair to say that for months, our confidence in our own electoral systems is shaken. This went to our Supreme Court and was decided, and to this day, argued about vehemently in the United States. Did we put the right person in office that year? And say we didn't, for the sake of argument, that would have changed the whole rest of the flow of our governance from then on. Just a lousy UI. Just a lousy little butterfly UI. Okay, those are the real problems. But now, back to the important stuff. My problems, okay? Let's talk about my problems a little bit. Chips and pickle button, okay? Do you want to know why there was a chips and pickle button on the cash register? Because the dude told me why. Because they didn't have enough room for 2 buttons. And that's it. They didn't have enough room to put 2 buttons in, so they had to cram 2 things into 1 button to fit the interface. And my nemesis made the cut. And that's why I always get the chips and pickle. There's more, of course, but let's look at those UX UI offenses, right? Again, function fit, okay? We fit an interaction or a task into a thing that existed for no other reason other than that it fit physically. Never a good reason to do anything. It's completely internally focused. There is a method that Jason's Deli has to consider how they deliver the food they make. And damn it, pickles go with lunch, okay, regardless of what you think. And so they imagine, why would anyone protest? Okay, now, I am a serious edge case. I'm sorry to say, we are edge cases. No one cares about us, okay? And maybe they shouldn't, but of course the interfaces all across are inconsistent, okay? Even we'll see the processes are. Of course, that's what really matters. Okay, now, here's the other real problem and why I always got a pickle. Because I get it, you made a button, but shouldn't you still be able to somehow make a way for me to not get a pickle? Wouldn't you agree? I shouldn't, okay, right, sure, I agree too. What happens is this, I say, no pickle, right? And the server at the cash register presses the chips and pickle button and then says, hey, Frank, no pickle on that one. Frank's like, you got it, Joe. And then Frank goes and makes the sandwich. Now, maybe Frank's distracted. Maybe Frank isn't really listening. And Frank goes ahead and puts a pickle in there because put a pickle in the bag and give it to Dean. Okay, right? That's how it happens. Now, at lunchtime, and by the way, I went back and observed all of this. So this is really UX in the field. You go and you order something at lunch, and there's a zillion people in there. And every time someone has to say, hey, Joe, hey, Frank, there's no pickle on this one. Okay, Joe, I got that. The likelihood that Frank is the guy making your sandwich is almost 0. Frank is telling someone else. So if he tells them at all, so then it's a game of telephone, and by the time they're packing my sandwich, like, oh, he wants extra pickles, and they put them in there. That's basically what happens. So I always get one. The whole system is set up to give me a pickle no matter what I do. And I'm an edge case of few, I guess. But it's a slapdash process, right? This is bad edge case testing, as if my edge case matters. Everything we're communicating is lost in translation, so it doesn't even matter what the interface was at the end of the day. There's 0 controls around it. Sound familiar? These sort of things, can cause nuclear meltdown. All right, I always get a pickle. Now, there is some significance to this for us, I promise. Okay, this is, excuse me, an intranet that we've made at my company. It's like for 8,000 users, whatever. Got some nice function to it. It's pretty cool. It's for a hospital. And we learned at some point that one of the things that's really needed in the hospital is access to documents. Fast access to documents. Okay, fair enough. That's fine. If you're a nurse and you're trying to deal with a procedure, or as the nurses said at first, if I got to prove that a doctor is out to lunch and doesn't know what they're talking about, I got to show them a procedure, I got to do it fast. Or if there's a problem and I need some kind of procedure fast, I got to go here, I got to find it. Okay, no problem. When we interviewed people about doing this project, we found out lots of great stuff that you care about, like, I can't do my job without this amazing thing you're making. We'll make it great. But then we get stuff like this. If I can't get this thing done, this search, these documents, man, my patient life could be at stake. Now, that got our attention, okay, because that means little interface quirks matter when it comes to searches like this. And we are going to get this right. We are going to test it. We're going to be careful about it. We're going to make sure performance is excellent, all this sort of stuff. And that leads us to think that even the smallest decisions we make as developers, as UX professionals, as writers, all these people who are involved in making a product really sing, all of it matters deeply. Little things, minor little things, they mean so much. A little PORV valve, it just didn't do quite the wrong thing and basically eradicated the United States nuclear industry. Single-handedly. Amazing. Process is always about process. You can look at an interface and see there's a problem, but there's always process behind it. And that is what unifies us. Okay, like if I am just a UX guy and we're in a development team together, we can always point to a process villain that we share. There's always something wrong with what either the client is doing or a system they have set up that's going to thwart the thing we're making. And it's our job to find it before it becomes a problem. Some problems are minor, some things get me a pickle, yeah, but some things are bigger. Just best to assume they're all serious. And that means we have more purpose than we think, because if not us, who is going to find these problems? Who? The project managers, the product owners, the client? Later, maybe the users will find it, and maybe we're long gone and we'll probably get blamed anyway. So it's important for us to think this way. And of course, this is really what we have to take away from the talk. This is important, and I've tried to change your mind. Hopefully I have. Okay, that's the crisps and pickle story. My name is Dean. I will happily stay for questions. I know an awful lot about these disasters. If you really care, then I can give you in a few minutes. But I really love that you stayed and listened. I'm actually speaking tomorrow too. I'm speaking on the science and psychology of stellar UI. It's really fun. And if you want to have a good time tomorrow, you come there too. There you go. Questions, I'll hang out. Or applause, that's fine too. The pickle hater starts the applause. Thank you. You want to know anything about 3 Mile Island? There's more. I almost put in John Denver, country singer from the United States, who crashed his plane due to a faulty UI. A really small UI quirk. Do you want to hear about it? Okay. So he was an experimental pilot and recreational drug user. And he was flying this experimental plane that has these controls and there was this, there's this lever behind him that he has to pull that controls fuel tanks, okay, and fuel tank balance, to put it very simply. And in order to get the fuel tank right, he'd have to reach over his shoulder, one side or the other. He actually fashioned, this is the workaround of all workarounds, he actually fashioned a mirror on his dash that could show him, he could see which one he's reaching for properly in a pinch. So talk about, I mean, you know, there's Excel macros and then there's mirrors on the dash. So the other problem was this, and I'm going to get out here for a minute and show you. So say I want to reach behind like this to perform some interface function. Well, it's hard, to reach as far as you need to. But if you stretch a little bit, you get way farther back. But your opposite leg goes forward, okay? Exactly where the controls were that were going to affect, what is the pitch? I think so. So anyway, he's reaching for the fuel tanks because he's got to switch fuel tanks, hits that and just goes, bam, and crashes. And that was that. It's just a really bad interface. And now, of course, the problem there is it's an experimental aircraft, okay? He knew what he was doing. They fixed it after that. So that user test went fine. But some tests don't have to be fatal, I would hope. All right, so that's the short end of John Denver. Excuse me, John Denver. That's all I got for you. Yes? I don't know. I think it's still ongoing. But he was mad, okay? Now, I think both parties in the Hawaiian fiasco are lying to us. Okay, which is a great assumption to make in situations like this. Because everyone has a self-interest, a vested interest in lying. The state of Hawaii has a vested interest in saying, is that guy? He did it. Politicians like, not me. Or, not the person who chose the software, not the person who didn't train people on the software, blah, blah, blah. So they have a vested interest in that. And the fact that he was summarily fired is probably more damage control than not. Now, was that guy telling the truth about when he picked up the phone and didn't hear things and they told him whatever? I don't think so. I rather like to think that there's a lot of villains in that story. But someone's going to win the dang lawsuit. I'll have to look into it. I haven't, honestly, in a couple of months, haven't looked it up. So, maybe it's been quietly settled. I don't know. But yeah, it was a big deal. The biggest issue was a rethink of how that software was used, which is good in my opinion, because the world is really full of bad software, y'all. I'm going to have a job as long as I want it. But it's our job together to make it better in the first place, which is why when people like me, UX people, technically adept UX people, right? And development teams work together, really good things happen. You can really make amazing stuff. But just most of the time, as you're probably aware in your experience, you don't have that probably. You don't have access to UX people, interface designers, user testers, all this sort of stuff. And without that, you're left to your own devices or the whims of your leadership. And that's a problem. And I'll hit on that in my talk tomorrow and what we might could do about it. Any other questions? Yes? Yeah. Yeah, we did share our findings with Jason Stelly. They disputed our conclusion, but we weren't wrong. They fought back on Twitter a little bit, but they weren't quite. I have to go back and find the tweets. They weren't quite ready for us being able to absorb the punch and come back. All I could say to them was, I really like your sandwiches, and I kept going to your restaurant. So really, what's the problem? And I asked them to kindly redesign their app. Damn it. Because no one should be subject to an unknown text field where you don't even know what you can and can't write, where there's a problem, when there's a problem, why there's a problem, whether a problem occurred at all. It took me a minute to realize there was a problem. I just couldn't. I'm typing. I typed like this whole long screed, and then suddenly I looked at the screen and realized there was nothing there. And so I had to backdrop. Oh, yeah. Don't get me started. I just think, I think when people start to make interfaces, they just lose their minds. And things that should be patently obvious are no longer so. Or they just simply weren't tested with real people. Almost certainly that's the case here. And someone said, what the heck, I can't type anything. You know, oh, that's because we limited it to 25 characters. Maybe they made the other field first and the next one second. Or maybe they just needed it to be taller. Because some designer said it would look better if it was taller. That could have happened. That probably happened.
I think they designed it first and built it, and then someone said it should be max 25. They forgot to update this.
Totally. That could have happened, yeah. Any one of those things. Standard problems. Have I convinced anyone about pickles? We're still okay with no pickles? Right, that's right. That's right. Call me crazy. Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks so much for coming. I hope to see you some of you tomorrow. Thank you.